Founders, welcome back to the 0 to 5,000 podcast, where we obsess over the convergence of human potential and business results. Today, our hosts Drew McClure and Jordan Mitchell have another insightful conversation for you. So let's jump right in.
All right, founders, welcome back to the podcast. Today, I'm joined by the founder of PadSplit, Atticus LeBlanc. Atticus attended Yale University and graduated with his BA in Architecture and Urban Studies. In 2017, he founded PadSplit, which was created to make homes affordable for the workplace. PadSplit takes one house or an apartment that is unaffordable and creates a shared living experience that is attractive, accountable, and affordable. PadSplit's concept was born out of the ATL Challenge Affordable Housing Ideas competition, where they were named a finalist and grant recipient from JP Morgan Chase and Enterprise Community Foundation. Before PadSplit, Atticus helped co-found Striant Investments and Construction, which was a real estate investment and construction company. Founded in 2008 to purchase and rehabilitate distressed single-family, multifamily, and commercial properties throughout Metro Atlanta. We are pumped to have such a creative and entrepreneurial-minded guest. So Atticus, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Drew. Appreciate the opportunity. Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you. So we took our stab at understanding a little bit of your background and the origin story, but in your own words, how did this thing get started? Tell us about it.
Yeah. I think all in all, I've had a pretty unconventional career path, but this particular journey likely started when I discovered in late 2007 that homes were a lot cheaper than they should have been. My previous career as a commercial broker had really hit the skids. I had just had my first son with my wife. She had told me she was going to stop working, and I only made 10 grand for the year in 2007, and it was pretty clear that wasn't going to work. So saw that homes were a lot cheaper than they should have been. Took every little bit of money that I had, which wasn't much, and anyone who would trust me with theirs, and started buying homes in 2008, renting those out largely in town Atlanta. They were through the Housing Choice program or Section 8, so it was all very affordable. And in 2009, because I was on the ground in these neighborhoods, I understood exactly what was going on, kind of block to block, street by street, house by house. And there was a rent by the room house next to one of mine with two guys, Otis and Mitch, and their house was being foreclosed. So they were unfortunately going to be out on the street soon. Mitch came to me one day and said, "Hey, can I rent rooms in your home, in the rental property that I had on the west side of town?" And it was really an aha moment for me, recognizing that here were folks who had, they were on Social Security income, which is of course a federal program. And they couldn't qualify for any housing option really anywhere. And then they wanted to rent rooms for me, and I asked them kind of how that worked. What did they need, and how would we do it? And I also recognized that, well, wait a second, if each of them paid me $100 a week per room, then it would be net more profitable for me than other traditional rental options. And so it was both more affordable for them and more profitable for me. Ended up buying a bunch of properties over the next couple of years, both single family and multifamily, owned and managed about 500 units over that period, and started buying commercial stuff. And the business really took off, but this initial concept had never really left me. And I was comparing the income statements of the various properties over years, and recognized that this was really a unique solution. And it was operationally very intensive. But if you could solve those operational issues, then it could really be something that scaled. And so in 2016, when I had reached my personal financial goals and wasn't worried about providing for my family anymore, had 3 more sons by that point as well.
Wow.
But I was really looking for my next chapter as how to create a force for good in the world that was sustainable beyond my lifetime. And went back to this model that I thought was really possible to do good and do well, and try to figure out, or how do you scale this, not just for a property development company, but how do you make it available for anyone who has has space today. Any housing provider in the country or around the world where they can develop or create housing that is both more affordable and more profitable simultaneously. And so that's
Mm.
really the origin story, and kind of goes from there. It's been a wild ride since 2017, but that's when it started.
Oh man, I love it. What is the? Can you be a little more specific and help me understand what is the kind of blueprint of what you're doing?
Sure. Yeah. So uh, what PadSplit does is effectively we exist as a marketplace, not unlike an Airbnb. But whereas Airbnb just provides listings hosted by other people for vacation rentals, we provide listings and services, but listings that are hosted by other people, and they are trying to rent individual furnished rooms on flexible terms for longer term basis. So our minimum term is 31 days, so it's not a vacation rental,
Right.
uh, but there is an enormous need for singles in the workforce who cannot qualify based on income or do not have a minimum deposit to get into a traditional apartment. They might not have a credit score. Um, and this provides a flexible living solution for those individuals. And that is a huge portion of the population, particularly the rental population
Mm.
in the United States. And I mean, at its core, what we do is fill those rooms, kind of fill rooms quickly, keep them filled, make it a very seamless process that is about as easy as booking an Airbnb for the end user or the resident. Then we collect all those payments, usually on a weekly basis or on a customized billing schedule that matches when they get paid by their employer. We remit those on a monthly basis to the host, and then we handle a lot of the customer service issues that arise. But yeah, we're a technology company, so we're not a real
Mm.
estate developer, even though a lot of people think we are. We're basically comparable to the long term housing equivalent of an Airbnb.
That makes sense. So when you were first starting, it was with properties that you owned, but eventually it
That's
became
correct.
much beyond that. Properties you don't own that other people own
Yeah,
that are using your marketplace to rent out a room.
exactly. Yeah. Again, I mean, I go back to what what I really wanted to do, and my goal for this company was to create a legacy for good in the world, and to ultimately solve this affordable housing shortage that we're facing, and has only gotten worse in the time that I've been in the industry for the last 20 years. And to do that, I saw two models. One, you had like an Invitation Homes who had 60,000 houses at the time, which was a lot of houses. But I knew that the shortage was around 7.5 million units. And so you look at Airbnb, which had 6 million. And I said, okay, well, if the goal is to solve the problem, I would be much more effective in trying to address it through a marketplace model where anyone anywhere can that has space can leverage this space to create more affordable, flexible housing choices for people that
Mm.
need them, as opposed to just trying to own everything and having a much smaller piece of maybe a more profitable and sustainable business, but you wouldn't be solving the problem.
Totally makes sense. What I'm curious about, you mentioned earlier the heaviness of the operational side and logistics, I'm
Sure.
sure, to take it from idea to a functioning reality. What were some of the first things you had to tackle to actually get some traction in getting this off the ground?
Yeah. So the biggest one early on was payments and processing and collecting payments. When I first started experimenting with shared housing in 2009, I didn't ever want to collect cash, so it was always money orders. But I would have to physically go out to the properties at least every week, sometimes multiple times a week, go to a Dropbox, unlock the Dropbox, take the money orders out, and then go deposit them. Clearly,
Wow.
that was not a scalable solution, but that was it. Like that was what you could do, or you had to have it in an apartment complex where people could come to the office. But I knew we had to solve that problem, and fortunately, there's just been huge advances in payments processing technology since then. Today, we are completely electronic payments. now most people, even though a large portion of our population does not have bank accounts, virtually everyone has at least a prepaid debit card where they get paid by their employer onto a prepaid debit card. And so mapping out all those electronic payments was a huge portion of it, and making sure that each individual user, even if you had 5 or 6 bedrooms in a house, could pay on the day that they got paid. So if that's every Tuesday, okay, well, the technology has to figure out, okay, well, this person pays every Tuesday. Somebody else may pay every second Thursday. Somebody else may pay every Friday. Somebody might just pay once a month. And building out that piece of it was the first major step.
Even going about collecting the information of when they get paid, that feels like a logistical nightmare.
Yeah, well, they tell us. I mean, we don't. If they want to pay the next day after they get paid, that's fine too. But really, it's just allowing each user to customize their own experience.
Okay.
That's the biggest thing that we do as a marketplace, is just provide choices, right? Whether that is choices of when you make your payment, or choices of where you want to live, or when you change your job, you can move to another location very easily and flexibly. But yeah, the entire system of building a marketplace is about creating more choices for people, and trusting that the most educated person to be able to decide what option is best for them is the person who's actually making that choice for themselves, and giving them the freedom and independence to do so on their own. And that's going to lead to the best outcome. So it's a huge part of what we do. And really, as a company, the only thing that we can do is provide information and tools and the right incentives.
How did you go about getting the first batch of, early adopters, the users, both listing
Yeah.
on there as well as those that were looking to rent and actually, adopt and use your platform?
I think the first thing I had to do was prove it. And the only way you can prove it is I was maybe the least risk averse person. So experimented with my own inventory, and converted one of my own houses. And then the next group of folks that were interested, I had them all tour my house, and I showed them, all right, look, in June of 2017, I brought this house onto the platform. I had it filled within 2 weeks. And you had just some incredibly transformational stories of life impacts that came out of that initial group of people that moved in. One of my favorites was a woman named Tiffany, who was renting a junky extended stay motel room off of I-20, and in her own words, was dodging drug dealers and prostitutes on her way to get to work as a night shift security guard, and
Wow.
started saving $600 a month. And I think those things resonated. Those were the early users on the resident side. And as Tiffany described, like, I've never lived in a shared situation like this before, but this is the nicest house I've ever seen. And so creating a better product and a better user experience for those residents was the first thing. And consistently now, 91% of our residents still say that they would refer a friend to live with us. And then for hosts to be able to offer their property, I toured them through this. I shared with them not just stories like Tiffany's and introduced them to the people that were living there, but also said, hey, look, like, this property is netting twice as much as it was previously, while also creating these transformational life impacts. And if that sounds too good to be true, here, let me show you. And we continue to do that today. And it's our biggest selling tool, is just showing people the product, telling people the stories, and then informing them of the data that we've collected over time.
Did you have to overcome the hurdle of people feeling comfortable with random strangers renting out space in their home?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, most of our units are investor owned. So,
Okay.
yeah, we have less of an issue there, but it's still a hurdle. I mean, I have rented a room in my personal home for almost 3 years now, and for my wife, certainly that was a huge barrier. But yeah, it's interesting. Like, for investors, the motivation and incentive is pretty straightforward. It's, am I going to earn more income from this property than I would in a different strategy?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we focused on that particular beachhead. But for for owner occupants, it's a different value proposition,
Yeah.
and you have to build a lot more trust. We hope that we'll get there, and we hope that there are a lot more people who will rent individual rooms in their house, and we're adding more customizable features within the product that allows them to determine not just, okay, I want to rent to a stranger, but maybe it's someone from your job, maybe it's someone from your church, maybe it's your brother-in-law's cousin, where you can break down the relationship so that it's no longer a stranger, and that makes a big difference as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Do people have to go through a vetting process of any kind to qualify to be able to use the
Definitely.
platform and that type of thing?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the biggest things that we do. I mean, I mentioned like the power of choice is the first thing. The other thing is trust. And I ask people, okay, well, what's the difference between hitchhiking and Uber? The answer is, well, really nothing. But you trust the device in your hand to have some sort of background check for the person driving, that you're not just going to get into the back of a car with an axe murderer.
Yeah.
And so, like, building that trust in any marketplace is a huge part of what everyone does. For us, it's, yeah, they have identity verification. There's background checks of everyone. There's income verification. And so you're trying to mitigate as much risk as possible. And then one of the benefits of a shared housing environment is you also have more eyes on that individual. And so
Right.
when a potential issue arises, it's not just, 1v1. It's usually like 4 or 5v1. And if you're hearing 4 or 5 different points of information that say, hey, this person is an issue or is causing an issue, then it's much easier to validate and intervene when necessary.
Totally. I mean, I even think about like at this stage, my wife is still hesitant to use like an Uber, whereas I don't think twice about it. I use it so much for work and travel. But
Sure.
however, the growing comfortability is, it's still a barrier for her. It's like, I don't know who this
Yeah.
person is driving and I'm just by myself. And I'm like, man, you do have to think about that, especially if you're the company building this platform and want people to adopt it, right? It's that trust element.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I wondered, I mean, if she gets in the back of a car with a taxi, if there's like a different trust element there, but yeah, it takes time and it takes a tremendous amount of effort to be able to do that.
Yeah. What about scale? What was the light bulb moment that helped you all scale it from, probably just a few users and a few proof cases to being much more widespread now?
Yeah, well, happy to say, at least as far as I'm aware, we are the largest co-living marketplace that's designed around the workforce. We have about 5,500 units across the country right now.
Wow.
We had always planned for scale. I mean, again, like the origin story of the company is, I only wanted to do this if we could help solve the problem, and that meant that you had to scale it. So there's not one individual thing. It's very much kind of the Eric Ries school of lean startup, where you build, you iterate, you learn. I had the benefit of a lot of experience in housing and in affordable housing and in even shared spaces generally. So I had a lot of experiential IP that had been built up over time. Uh, so not really one thing, but certainly that payments infrastructure was a major one.
Yeah. What's it been like for you as a founder, just personally, going on the ride of the
Oh
business?
man, whew. It's been a doozy. Been a doozy, Drew. Yeah, it's funny. I never envisioned myself as a CEO of a large company ever.
Hmm.
Um, I was very content for most of my entrepreneurial career to be one man show, or at most a 10-person, 15-person operation. And even then, it was usually at least two of us
Yeah.
that were running things. Um, it has been by far the hardest thing I've ever done, and I think the most personal growth that has almost been forced on me. You are in situations and forced to confront real costs, both personally, professionally, and for others. That it's not a natural motion, right? I mean, the
Right.
act of being a CEO is not at all a natural motion, and you have to become super resilient in amongst a lot of adversity.
Yeah. What was the most maybe unnatural or difficult aspect of that CEO role for you?
Um, One of our core values is compassionate directness,
Hmm.
and that is really really hard uh, to when you have to lay people off, or when you have to let people go, or when you just have to give people really hard feedback that may be taken really personally. But you look at whatever the mission or vision of the organization is. For us, the mission is pretty clear, and we all are aligned around that. We're trying to help solve the affordable housing crisis one room at a time, and we do that by leveraging housing as a vehicle for financial empowerment. And that is our North Star. Uh, and you can have a lot of great people who um, can align around that North Star, but ultimately are not achieving what they need to achieve as quickly as they need to do it. They're not growing with the scale of the organization, because when you're talking about exponential growth, you could have a person who is perfect on day one, who is not competent at that particular role in 180 days,
Yeah.
and being willing to have those compassionately direct conversations that treats those folks with empathy, while at the same time acknowledging that what's best for the business is making a change.
Hmm.
And those are incredibly difficult conversations. And sometimes you have to have those conversations internally as well, and understand what you can do, what you can't do, and what are the pieces you need to build around you and rebuild around you constantly.
Is there a way you've come to think about those conversations that's helped you be more willing to have them and maybe even navigate them emotionally a little better than feeling so bad and wanting to avoid it so much?
Yeah, absolutely. Come back to my to that mission and the vision and the core values constantly,
Hmm.
every week, sometimes every day, and every decision that I'm making. Uh, and without that foundation, it becomes incredibly burdensome personally. And when you're not, it's easy to I think it's easy to get caught up in the number of really difficult decisions you have to make, but it's a lot easier to sleep when with each decision you know that you are following your core values and your North Star,
Hmm.
and almost impossible without that.
It makes so much sense. Like, whether it's faith or philosophy or business core values, having some kind of code that you believe in doesn't take care of 100% of the decisions, but I imagine about 90% of them are clear to see if it's following that
Sure.
or not. And like you said, it
Yeah.
helps
Oh,
you make the
yeah.
decision a little quicker, sleep a little easier. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, they're all still really hard,
Yeah.
right? You're making really hard decisions that impact people's lives, uh, but yeah, you need that code to follow, and to be able to sleep at night and live with yourself, and justify over the long term that you made the right call. And where anytime I regret a decision, it's largely because I feel like we've strayed from those things.
Hmm.
And even if you're making really hard decisions otherwise, so long as you're keeping that mission, vision, values at the forefront, uh, you feel at least some solace in knowing that it was the right call.
Yeah. The other part of the decision that I hear often, and I've experienced myself as a founder, is the analysis paralysis, where you just get
Sure.
stuck on a certain strategic vision or a gut call on whether we go this way or that way, say yes or no. Have you experienced that where you just feel stuck with analysis paralysis? And if so, how do you move past that?
I've never felt that true. I've always just been,
Just always clear and confident in your
yeah,
decisions.
just always had the answer. Yeah, of course, man. It's I don't know that the process for me is different though. I mean, we have deadlines, right? You've got deadlines. You know that you have to make a call. And in the same way that I rely on the mission, vision, values in thinking about what decision to make, it's also informing when the best time is too sometimes.
Yeah.
And I've been an entrepreneur for 17 years, so I'm certainly comfortable operating in the gray, and making choices without knowing what's going to happen, and
Hmm.
accepting the risks of those, and understanding like I could be wrong. Uh, but you know that a choice has to be made. And somebody told me once, there are no good choices. There are only choices.
Hmm.
And I believe that in most cases it's true.
Yeah. Staying on just you a little bit longer, because a lot of the people we have listening here are founders and leaders of at least departments or not organizations themselves. Are there any habits or things that you do kind of consistently that you found to just either be anchoring or, productive for you, personally or professionally?
Sure. Yeah. I journal every day.
Hmm.
Uh, just write something. I have a little journal app in my phone, um, and have written every day consecutively for 2.5 years at this point. That's been a big one, and particularly because it's in my phone, I can go back on the same day a year, 2 years, 3 years ago, and recognize either how I have grown personally, or or decisions I wish I would have made sooner, issues that I've been struggling with. I was struggling with then that I think, oh man, I've grown so much since that point. Or they're little reminders of, okay, like the situation today is not that different from a situation a year or 2 or 3 years ago. And so that's been one that's been really grounding, and just helping process thoughts,
Hmm.
not dissimilar from meditation. I wish I meditated more regularly than I do, but yeah, that just journaling has been the biggest for me, and running, exercising in general.
Is journaling primarily a way to get confusion out of your brain and onto paper and make some sense of it? Like, what's the main value for you there?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, and just uh, cementing or solidifying, if you will, uh, thoughts of the day, what you're grateful for, uh, what you think you could have done differently, um, trying to process whatever struggle you may be going through on any particular day, or just a memory that you want to come back to at
Hmm.
some point in time. It's all of those things.
Is it same time every day?
I wish. I can't. I can't quite pull that off. Uh, I usually try to do it in the morning, but yeah, it doesn't always work out that way. Especially when I've got to take my boys to swim practice at 5:40 in the morning.
Oh God, that sounds terrible for everybody involved. Um, is there a format that you use? Is it just free flowing, free thought, or do you follow like I always do what I'm grateful for, what like? Is there a format to it?
Yeah, always try to make a note of what I'm grateful for, and then any big to dos. Like if I've got, and try to limit it. It's not a checklist. It's not a punch
Hmm.
list. But if I have uh, 2 to 3 big decisions, or major things that I want to accomplish that day. So what were my learnings from yesterday? What am I grateful for, and how am I going to apply that today?
Cool. That totally makes sense. And then you mentioned running and exercise. That's been a somewhat of a consistent topic on here, but I'm curious for you, what role does that play? Why is that important for you?
Yeah, I think just getting anxiety out, and I mean, there's a huge impact on just sleeping generally as a founder, to keep you from waking up and staying up at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So it's pretty pragmatic, but I mean, I notice when it's been too long since I've been exercising. But yeah, running is super simple. I only started maybe 7 years ago, but you get a pair of shoes and shorts, and you're good to go, and you can start to process things. I think it's helpful mentally, uh, in the moment, but certainly long term. and just getting some of the stress and anxiety out and getting outdoors and putting yourself in nature to whatever degree you can.
I love that. I mean, same for me. Running it always represented either punishment or progress towards some goal, right? Like it's either, in sports, it felt like punishment. Like when you got in trouble, I was
Sure.
told to go run. And so I had that connotation with it. Or the other was you're trying to get, better in shape, or you're trying, which is all great. But for me, what made it a consistent habit was understanding the mental benefits for me. That like moving your body grounds your mind, helps me get clarity quicker on things. Sometimes I don't even have to run. It's just a brisk walk, and like
Sure.
just getting, like you said, even getting outside, especially now work from home, you can feel
Yep.
trapped in the same place. Like you just been here all the time. There's no separation between work and life. And man, my wife was always like, why do you always go to the park instead of like our neighborhood? You could walk around our neighborhood. I'm like, cause it's still here. Like I need to go somewhere else,
Yeah.
do you feel that as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. As you were saying that, I was thinking. I mean, heck, especially now that I'm working from home, our entire team works remotely. Um, it's a huge benefit just to have a drive on occasion,
Yeah.
uh, and just give yourself some time to process, and sit with your thoughts or be bored, because there's so much stimuli that's coming at us at any given time, whether it's from your phone or your computer or what have you. And
Yeah.
yeah, love just getting out there, whether it's on a run or even a drive.
Yes. I mean, this is relevant because it's come up several times in this with people experiencing either hybrid or fully working from home. What they missed were some of those transition periods, where
Hmm.
you got to transition out of home to work and the time you got to slowly transition in the car and then vice versa on the way back. And so for me, what's helped is I go to Starbucks, even though I know I'm wasting $6. Like I get it. Everyone that's listening, I could do it at home. I've got the coffee maker, but it's worth it to me to spend 30 minutes to an hour at that Starbucks and be around other people. That's when I do my
Sure.
journaling and my reading. For some reason, it helps me to be kind of in that chaotic environment with my headphones on. And then I get to come home and it feels like I had some kind of like transition from waking up to starting my day. And then at some point I'll go on a run or go to the gym. And those are like the
Yeah.
two little, they don't take long, but little bits of breaking the day up some. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah. I totally get it. It's not Starbucks for us anymore because ours closed, but Banjo Coffee in Avondale Estates on occasion.
I love it. For me, when I was in your area, it was it Cacao or is that the one that's near me? Dang it. Is it in downtown Oakhurst? The little coffee shop that's in downtown
Kavarna.
Oakhurst. Kavarna.
Yeah,
Yes.
Kavarna still there.
That was my spot. We were close to Kavarna, and I
Yeah.
would just go there and work to get around people. But literally, I have a friend today who went out of a traditional job, is doing an entrepreneurial journey, and my most simple advice to him was like, "Dude, you just got to go work from a coffee shop for a little bit.
Yeah.
Like you're getting too in your head because you've been home all day, and like you just go do any of the stuff you're not doing live, like talking to
Yeah. Just
someone
go
or
get out.
whatever. Get out, man. Like soak in the energy of other people and just little things like that have gone a long way. Um, on the internal side of things, what's the size? Like what's the size of the team right now at PadSplit?
135 right now.
Good Lord, that's a big team.
It is. Yeah, it
Was
is.
that was that a challenge? I mean, what it seemed like for me is there's different like stages of the company depending on the size. Like there's that early organic stage where we all kind of know each other, and then you get to 30, 40, 50 people and you're like, I didn't even know we hired that person. And there's kind of different
Sure.
stages. Have you experienced it like that?
It's been different. I don't know how big we were when we went fully remote at the beginning of the pandemic, but I tell you, it's more seamless in a remote environment
Hmm.
than in person. Uh, you just, of course, my office doesn't change, right? I'm still in my house every day, and so I still see just me. And even when I'm still looking at the same screen, regardless of if there are 10 people or 1,000 that are on the screen. Um, so it's yeah, I'd say the biggest thing is just the reliance on managers to manage their own teams, and of course, you have to be much more intentional about communication
Yeah.
and what messaging gets out where. Um, it's why I have come back and I'm so intentional about the mission, vision, value stuff. Is because at least you can make sure that you have alignment on those things.
Yeah.
Uh, and it just makes those communications a lot easier because there are thousands of decisions being made every single day that you're never going to know about. And trying to build that common set of values and decision making processes, I think, is one of the few things that you can do as a CEO. But it's certainly different. Again, I always figured out I'm not nearly type A enough to be a CEO of a large company.
Have you found that the most important use of your time is different now than it was earlier in the company?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, in the early stage of the company, you're doing everything, right? If you don't show up and you don't do the actual things to turn the crank, it's going to die.
Yeah.
Whereas at some stage, I relate to the term chief emotional officer, and I certainly, I mean, that became a huge part of my job. Fortunately, I like that part and have no problem being the chief emotional officer generally. But yeah, I mean, you go from doing to managing, and then the management stages change over time as well as the organization grows, and sometimes that can happen really quickly.
How do you see your role right now?
Um, today there's a lot going on in the broader market. Uh, we are in a state of flux. We're, as a company, I'm sure you've heard the term kind of peacetime CEO, wartime CEO. Uh, we're in a transition from peacetime to wartime. Just looking at the market opportunity that's ahead of us, and the conditions, and the fact that, look, venture funding is really not unlikely here in the foreseeable future. So we need to batten down the hatches and make sure that we have an extremely motivated group of people who are being held accountable to the KPIs and the OKRs that we're pushing on. Realign on some strategic initiatives. So today it's reorganizing, rallying the troops, and recommitting to some core strategies that I think will ultimately decide whether we live or die as a company.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I don't want to kind of dance around it. But yeah, I think a lot of CEOs across the country are have in a similar state right now. And fortunately for us, in a business that is very resilient, because I mean, people need affordable housing in every market. The current market cycle is just as likely to be tailwinds for us as it is headwinds. But it's really up to us at this point, and always want to be in a position to control our own destiny, and I think we're in that position today, and want to maintain that position.
What have you found to be most effective in the aligning and energizing the team, like you mentioned?
It depends. I mean, I'm not a huge rah-rah guy, to be honest with you. Um, I like stories, particularly if they're true stories. Authenticity is a huge thing that I appreciate about our company, and if there's one overarching description of the people that and the culture that we've created, I think it's authentic. And for me, it's telling it like it is, and saying, okay, look, here's the real situation. Here's where we are. Here's where we need to go. And here's why it's really, really important. to do. And being vulnerable with where I am in evaluating whatever that goal happens to be, and anticipating that we have a really strong team that can get us there. And just, I think just laying it out, putting the facts out there, and acknowledging that if you hire the right people who are aligned with your mission and values, then they're going to get it done.
Heck yeah. Last question, and then I'll let you go. I love to know what people are learning, what they're reading. Is there anything that you is just a particular book? Could be personal, could be business, doesn't matter. That you find yourself recommending the most?
Atomic Habits by James Clear is probably the one that I recommend the most. I also just finished Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz, which I would absolutely recommend for every CEO. And then if you haven't ever read Lean Startup by Eric Ries, that's like kind of the Bible for just starting any business, I think, right now, and has been.
Heck
for
yeah. Can you give me
15 years.
Can you give me just a few sentence description of the hard things about hard things?
Be yourself. Like, that's it. Yeah. Be true to yourself, be true to your values, and accept that you may fail. Like, you may fail, this may fail. And there are millions of people around the world that are walking parallel paths, but it is a very lonely road. The best description that I've heard of being a CEO, he gives in the book, is talking about like the connecting point between two pyramids. One that is inverted, that is your external stakeholders, a la your investors and people that are investing in you to go achieve some objective. And then you have the pyramid below, that is your customers and your staff and everyone who's looking up at you and expecting you to perform. And you are the single point of connection between those two pyramids. There are a lot of people in that position, but it doesn't make it any less lonely. And so when you're making those hard decisions, you need to have a North Star that you're coming back to. Because otherwise it's a pretty crushing burden.
Beautiful. Well, Atticus, my man, thank you for taking time, being here, sharing your story and your wisdom. I'm glad this company exists. I'm glad there's people like you out there doing good in the world, and I'm excited to see what happens for you all in the future.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Drew. I really appreciate the opportunity again. Yeah, it's been great chatting with you.
Yes, sir.
Founders, thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and hop into our monthly founder email so we can ensure you stay on the edge of peak performance and massive business results.